president and founder of the Association for Community Empowerment Solutions, ACES World. On behalf of our team, I would like to welcome you to our series of conversations on girls' education. ACES World works to support women and girls in Colombia, Uganda, and Ghana. We work toward gender equality and supporting women and girls to achieve their full potential. We also founded the Gender Equality Data Collaborative to assist NGOs with data collection, monitoring, and evaluation. The GED currently has 40 members in 10 countries. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask, please feel free to place them in the chat. So we are pleased to host this conversation with Daniel JeanLouis. Daniel JeanLouis is a Haitian entrepreneur with a passion for job creation through business in Haiti. Since 2013, his investment firm, Bridge Capital, has provided debt and equity investment for Haitian companies seeking credit or working capital to accomplish their objectives. In addition, he owns and operates Trinity Lodge, the #1 guest house in Port-au-Prince, according to TripAdvisor customer feedback. Daniel writes and speaks about Haiti, and he writes and speaks about Haiti and foreign aid in his books, particularly From Aid to Trade, how aid organizations, businesses, and governments can work together to pursue ambitious and practical solutions. In his latest book, From Aid to Trade Sustainability, Daniel explores his 5 key principles for opportunity-based economic development. I first met Daniel when I was working with teachers in Haiti, where I began my development career. Daniel was generous with his time and helped me to begin to understand what constitutes help. The guidance he offered during the time I spent in Haiti has informed the work that I do and the work of ACES World. We begin every project with a question: how can we help? So thank you, Daniel, for your generosity and agreeing to join us today.
Linda, thank you for inviting me, and I'm very happy to talk to you and the other ACES members you have from around the world, and also to be part of this community of people thinking, networking, and talking about the link between education and betterment, basically, I like to call it. So I'm looking forward to have a good time with you today. Again, Linda, thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. So Daniel, one of the things that inspired me to ask you to this conversation is I read something that you wrote, and you said, I have been appalled by some of the comments I see online regarding Haiti. Confusing victims with the perpetrators is unfair and dangerous. The Haitian population is the victim here and always has been. Can you explain?
I'm just referring to basically some of the approach and understanding, basically the worldview that I feel like sometimes is wrongly portrayed in the media. And, they would describe Haitians as looters, as destroyers, as people of no value. And I think that because they take the picture and the segment, they take a few seconds of an hour movie, and that just portray an inaccurate and unjust and unfair picture of the Haitian society in general. And I feel like because the media sometimes like to sensationalize everything, and that's often the case in Haiti, where you have large media outlets in the United States only covering the bad side of Haiti, the Haiti that, where the burning tires, the coup, but rarely they cover the single individual moms who are working hard to make ends meet. We work in remote areas of Haiti in education. I run some of the two largest education institutions in the country, and I meet those moms. and you see dads who left home long time ago. Mom is left with 4 or 5 kids, and they wake up in 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, go to the garden, go to work to sustain those families, and then 20 years later, those kids come out to be decent people working, members of church, members of those communities. You never hear those stories. And I feel like because of that, Haiti is always portrayed in the wrong way, misunderstood. And because of that, we've not been able to attract the right kind of support, positive people who see the Haitian people as people of value, of hard work. You've been in Haiti, you've been in my place. Well, I run a small guest house, but can accommodate about 50 people. And with limited amount of supervision, everybody knows what they're doing. They keep everything clean, they keep the guests happy. And, we need to value these people. We need to see where they come from. We need to understand them. And this is the Haiti that I feel like we should talk about. We should cherish and encourage.
So thank you. I will tell you that from my experience in Haiti, I found Haitians to be generous and, as you said, very hardworking. I mean, so many people work so hard for so little. So, I agree that we don't really tell the story often enough of, the Haitian people and what they've been able to accomplish and the difficulty they have to overcome every single day to accomplish even the smallest things.
Exactly.
So when I was in Haiti, I asked a young boy what he would like to do when he grew up. And it was during the presidential election, and the boy said that he would like to be president. So I asked him why. And he said, so he could give his friends and family money. And so when so many people suffer from extreme poverty, how do you eliminate corruption? If children are not in school, how do they understand democracy and civic responsibility?
Well, the answer is simple, Linda. They don't. We're not going to paint a rosy picture that's not there. The lack of access to education is evident in Haiti. The two organizations that I run, we build and operate about 400 schools. And with about, between Paul and Action and Baptist Haiti Mission, we have about 70,000 children in school throughout the year. And the total amount of schools we have, the government of Haiti build and operate only 15%. Only 15%. Where, in the Constitution, it says that education is a right. Every kid has a right to go to school. But the reality is a different questions. Where is the government going to have the resources to plan the education? Because education in itself is a life changer. People needs to be educated so they can make good decisions for their individual life. And also education is a tool for economic development. This is where you can learn at early age how to manage money, how to understand your environment, how to connect with people of different gender. How do you learn to do multiplications? Those basic tasks that you learn from school don't just make you a better person, because that's what it does at the first of all, but also it prepares you to learn the skills that you need to further advance your society and better your countrymen in a sense. So because you have a government that is working at a limited capacity, and the government basically is not a tool that is not a platform that facilitates economic development. It's a platform where people go and do corruption. And because of this practice has been going on for so long, the practice of normalized corruption, I would call it, and it's been going for so long that it became not only a culture, but it starts to have an effect on the character of people. This is when you have people of their entire worldview is based on the corrupted mentality. And because they've seen that happened for so long that this is almost the only reality they know. And this is when this it becomes very dangerous, because how do you lead change? How do you change that person's worldview when they don't have an alternative understanding or an alternative example they can refer or connect to allow them to become a better person? So basically, they live the status quo, they watch the status quo, and the status quo is the only reference they can fall back on. So now, in that sense, this is how you see this little boy that somehow his worldview is skewed. Poor little guy, we love the little guy, but his worldview needs to be changed. But how do you change his worldview? Because he didn't wake up one day in his dream learning this. He learned that from watching, hearing, seeing that happens over and over, where government officials, presidents, and dictators come into power and pillaging the public treasury and buy themselves villas and things like that. And then you see these kids end up learning this is the right way to go, when in fact, this is exactly why that little boy cannot have all the opportunities they deserve, because that exact situation has been happening for so long. And there's been countries in Africa where, you've had the same situation, and there are books after books, articles that document the culture of ransacking that has existed in Africa in that way, pillaging, I would say, officials when the population is suffering. And that has been changing a lot. You see, there are very good leadership that are coming up in Africa that are pro-development, pro-transparency, that are making the right investment, the right strategy. And this is giving a lot more better situation. We see countries like Kenya, even Benin today, even Republic Democratic of Congo, which is one of the poorest countries in the world, even poorer than Haiti. Weirdly, that has a lot of natural resources. You see those countries starting to turn around. I think the determining factor has been leadership. They just were given access to better leadership. And then those leadership has been able to, those leaders, modern leaders, have been able to learn this new way, modern way, cleaner way of administrating and leading through their exposure to better governance systems. And somehow they see the connection, okay, my country can do better if I do it this way, that way. And as a result, you see an exponential growth in standard of living of many places.
Thank you, Daniel. So, according to a recent UNICEF report, security in Haiti has disrupted the provision of education and other basic services to children. And during the 2019 to 2020 school year, about 60% of Haitian schools were closed for at least 60 days due to violent social unrest. So this year, rising gang violence and insecurity have prevented many children from going to school, especially in urban areas around Port-au-Prince. So what do you see as the long-term impact of this violence on education and the future of Haiti?
Well, my network, the network of schools that we are managing, because I receive regular data on how their academic performance is. And this is not just some average, this is real. Those are, we've seen a significant decrease in children performance by at least 30% of grades they have received for the last 3 years. There's something called the country lock, pay lock in Haiti, where you basically, because of violence, you have to stay home. They basically has significant gang problems that has been developed in the last 2 years, where systematically younger people who've not been employed all their lives, now they have access to gangs, to guns, and they're using it to their advantage. And you will see, because of that, people are protesting, and a lot of people are unhappy with the situation. So they protest, and because of violence, everybody had to stay home. And because of that, children are not able to attend schools. And the sad situation is many of those children, they only get one meals, and that's the one meal that we give them at the school, right? And children, their brain grow from 0 to 6 years, and during that time they need protein, they need iron, they need omega-3, and they need sodium for their brain to grow physically. By the time they're 6 years old, and then if they don't have these nutrients in their system, then you have kids who are 40 years old, of their brain only grew at 30%, 20%, that are supposed to be solving complex society problems. And sadly, those children were deprived of those meals. So I think those violence has set Haiti backward for at least 10 years. And we would have to work very hard to compensate the lack, because you have those children, they're missing days of school, not just 1 year, several years. UNICEF talks about 3 months. I think they're missing a good 6 months, and cumulatively. And those children, you can do whatever you can, but they're still missing some key knowledge that they normally would receive in the classroom, the homeworks and the interactions, the opportunity of growth that they need to learn to be an adult. So as a result of that, you would have to see over the years how they can catch up in terms of, and what's funny is because at the end of the year, the government had to revise the school program to a much simpler version, because there was not enough time, because the children, they had to move to the next grade, and the next grade already has its full load of material to cover. And then there's those materials for the prior year that would serve as basis for them to understand the next year. And because of that, you can see the chain reaction that goes into, okay, the next year they don't understand the material because they didn't see the material from the year before, and the year after that, and the year after that. So with the right course of action, we try to keep our schools open a little bit longer in the summer. And also we are trying to open the schools a little bit earlier, and that costs even more money, and the government schools don't have the resources. So it's a chain reaction that is caused by political violence on the education that has concrete consequences for the years to come.
Thank you. So just kind of speaking of nutrition again, you write that basic needs for food, shelter, clean water, clothing, and education suffer when income inequality is out of control, and that about 25% of people in Haiti have no electricity, 50% use unsanitary water, and only half the children attend school, while 30% of the population experience food insecurity. So in Haiti, the majority of schools are still, if I understand this correctly, private and require payment of school fees. So how does this lack of educational opportunity for so many children exacerbate income inequality?
Oh, very much so, it does, because there are two different levels here. The first level is primary schooling. Most of the schools that we build and operate within my network, which is close to 400 schools, and those are the schools in remote areas where the governments are not even present. And those schools are sponsored, like they are sponsored with, folks in the Haitian diaspora, folks in the US, in the Netherlands, in Canada that sponsor a child. This is how the school is. We have the finances to pay the teachers a decent salary, to afford school materials, and afford a meal, right? But the government, unfortunately, the budget they allocate for education is one of the lowest in the world, and it's lower than the president's budget. It's lower than the parliament's budget. And some years there's a little bit of effort, but on average, there's not significant resources allocated from the government's budget to support schools. And the private schools, you know, on the primary level, it's free because they're sponsored, but their parents in our schools are required to perform and give in-kind services to the schools to compensate what their children are receiving. But secondary school is mostly for pay. Secondary school, that's, you know, from 6th grade to 12th grade is where, you know, most children drop out because children have to pay to learn and parents don't have the jobs. They don't have the jobs because there's not enough stability for investment to happen to create the jobs. Then the chain reaction we talked about earlier start to have an effect on not just education, but the economy, but the standard of living of the citizens. The World Economic Development Index from the United Nations talks clearly about this. It's just to have a decent citizen that enjoys the quality of life, those countries have to perform in at least 3 different criteria, which is economics. The GDP of the country has to grow because there's new amount of people coming, you know, the population is growing, so resources needs to grow to keep up with the demand, with the needs. The second thing is health. People have to have health so they can live longer. And the longer they live, the more resources they will consume. You see that in the United States, people are living 94, 95 years old. And during those years, they don't work, you know, they don't work, but they keep on consuming. So there's got to be a system that facilitates the resources that the retired population would need to perform, especially if they don't have stocks or productive assets within the system that keep them going. So they have to rely on some sort of social security. And then you have education. So education is a crucial determinant that allow people to have health and jobs, because without education, in one of my second book, we made the study and we discovered from our study that people's lives are changed at the level of educated. If you are uneducated, you have a job. This is on average. This is not just in the United States of America. You're uneducated, you have a job, you will get by, you will live a positive life, but it will not be significant. Only the tool of education that breaks the inequality, that when the people are educated, not just primary, secondary, high school, but they have to learn a skill. And today's preferably computer skills that don't just give them a positive standard of living, but also give them a significant positive, significantly higher than they would normally have. So basically, you would see this. This is the reaction when you have in a broken society where the budget is ill allocated and it's poorly allocated, not according to priorities, not according to defining areas of life, such as education, health, but also goes to the administration of the government, to per diem, to salaries, to, you know, renting, you know, helicopters and airplanes and stuff like that. That does not generate any positive return for society in the long term. Not only it's ill allocated, but it's too small to begin with. You're talking the whole country of Haiti, total budget is about $2 billion. And this is significantly small compared to our neighbor in the Dominican Republic and other countries of similar population. So basically, it's the problem is a leadership problem, it's a governance problem, but it trickled down to everything else in life. Okay, so that's just an area of all this.
Okay. So in Haiti, nearly half of the households are led by women, and you referred to this earlier. And as they form the majority of vendors and support agricultural supply chains, and I don't know how this has been affected by COVID. However, women and girls continue to be affected by severe inequality and by gender-based violence. How do these factors affect the health and growth of Haiti, and just not just Haiti, but at nations around the globe as well?
Well, I think we have to make it intentional, because with vulnerability come all kinds of abuses. If you're vulnerable, I've seen little boys who are vulnerable, who are taken advantage of, being raped. Young girls, before they could have the consenting ages, are being taken advantage because they grew up in a home where uh, parents don't have any means, where their parents died, and they're interested in their relatives, and their relatives taking advantage of them, or other people in the society take advantage of them. And not just the mean, but you see, there's a whole intentional about how do we protect the next generation, because the idea is a country invest in this generation to prepare for the future. And you can have a whole generation that are abused, that are damaged, I would say. It's a terrible word to use, but when you look at it, it's just almost exactly that are damaged by abusive. They're abusing every way you can think about it. Lack of food, their brain don't develop, and they're abused sexually. Their self-being is being abused. Children, street children, wiping cars, getting denied all day long. And, it's just a simple infection would kill them, or would impair them, make them disabled, adding to the fact that, so being disadvantaged, living in a poor society that is disadvantaged, put the whole society at risk. Because all of a sudden you have a whole generation of people that are passing through, because that's just, ill thinking, because it doesn't matter how you act, you're going to go. Like, you and I, we look good today, but let's check ourselves in 40 years, right? We just going to, like, if we don't prepare that new generation well to better what was there, it doesn't matter. It's still going to be a poor society with even more abuse and even less inapt to connect to the world of technology and connectedness today. So unless we are intentional about investing, prioritize the new generation, to invest in them, and young girls, young boys who are vulnerable, who have no parents, who have no opportunity to, some of those kids, they have no opportunity to begin with. They were never on any part of any race. Like the race of life, they were discarded from the beginning. Mm-hmm. And my own dad, my dad was born in such a poor family, one of the poorest families in the whole country. And so a better-to-do lady showed up. He wanted to adopt my dad's younger brother. And then he went away to the woods. And then my dad came up and said, "Why don't you take me?" And that lady took my dad in and took care of him, schooled him. And that's why I'm here today, because he was offered that opportunity that breaks the chain. I can be friend with you right now. I'm schooled. I'm writing books. I'm speaking worldwide because of that opportunity. Well, a large majority of kids are never part of the race. They're discarded right up from the beginning. And if we don't treat this problem as a society problem, we leave it at individual level, we leave it at family level, then we'll not make the effort to be intentional of how we use resources, the programs we put together, the type of education, the kind of safety that we put around the country to make people feel, to invest, feel safe, to invest, to enjoy life, to be productive, then we are deemed to have a worse off society tomorrow than we have it today. This is when poverty can be predicted. If you keep doing the same thing over and over, it will produce the same result or worse, right? So that's just, to me, intentionality is the first step. The second step is, how do we invest? And third step is, what do we invest in? Like, this is, you can train people to work in the garden, or you can train them to become software engineer. What kind of society we want is primarily the foundational question.
Thank you, Daniel. So that kind of led me into what my next question is going to be. So we spent the first part of the conversation focusing on challenges that Haitians face. And so I'd like to spend the second part kind of focusing more on solutions. So I wondered, just referring to your two books, if you can talk a bit about what you mean by opportunity-based economic development.
Opportunity-based economic development is a new paradigm for development that I created. In my first book, me and my partner, Jackie Clammer, we talked about this. And in the second book, we went in detail to make a whole research to document that opportunity is the cornerstone for economic development and society betterment. Without opportunity, there's no room for progress. If individuals, classes of societies are not offered the opportunity to be productive, to grow, society will remain undeveloped, unproductive, and stay behind in the race of development throughout the world today. And I talk about that in the basic sense of being able to start a small business, to trade. Trading is the mechanism that produce return, right? The whole world live on trade, and there are a few countries that have restricted trade today. Very few. You can count North Korea, where individuals, you work for the government in turn take care of you. And so people are not really free to trade with each other. I mean, by trading, I mean, you trade when you create value. That's basically how the world functions. In the US, you're a teacher, you trade your teaching skills to the government. In return, you get an income. And all these women you talk about in Haiti, that's what they do all day. They trade. It's trade-based economy where, and that's been going on since modern economy existed. I don't want to go into all this history of it, but basically today, you learn by trading. Trading is the single best way for creating economic value. And if you live in Cuba or North Korea or some very restricted part of the world, and those are very few, you may have problem trading because of inherently the kind of society that they have. But in countries like Haiti, that are supposed to be open countries, but yet, because of how the system is set up, you almost have the same restriction as those closed countries. To start a business, those may not be on paper. It may say you do, but in reality, when, for instance, you have to spend $6,000 to register a corporation, when you need a lawyer to do it, why do you need a bloody lawyer to register a business? Why can't it be that you just fill out one sheet of paper and pay $5 or $1 to start a business that will provide taxes to the government? And those are the inhibitive factors that keep people poor. And Obed tells you that the countries that have made it easy, open for entrepreneurship to happen, to be created, for individuals to pursue opportunities. Because there are two factors in OBED. There's opportunity turning factors. This is your desire. This is personal. This is you wanting to be better, to have a better life, to own a home, to build equity. And there's the opportunity supporting factors, that those are the safety, the network of resources available to you within safety and an infrastructure that you pay the government to make available to you. And OBED tells you that the countries that have made the most significant progress are the countries that apply those principles. And it's continuously investing in those two factors, opportunity turning factors, opportunity supporting factors. And we have discovered that we studied 38 countries, and they have done almost 50% growth return on their GDP because of those principles. Those are countries like, you know, South Korea. Those are countries like Finland, who 40 years ago was in poverty. Finland, the highest country in education today, was poor, okay, 40 years ago. South Korea, China, it's because they opened up, even the China is closed politically, but economically, they opened the country somehow where Western companies can go and manufacture, do transactions. And then the amount of people employed are getting wider, and the government is getting more resources. Now, what they do with it is a different question. But the question is, because they can trade, they are creating more values economically. And that values they create economically give them a better way of living in terms of education and health. And that boosts their standard of living and in terms of development index.
Okay, thank you. So you mentioned how countries can move forward. And in your book, you say that they need to create policies, invest resources, invite help, measure results, and live in a positive and forward-looking mindset. So what policies, and I think you mentioned this a bit in your past answer, but what policies are generally necessary to protect women and girls and to move toward gender equality in society? And I bring this up because I think in many countries we still have the situation where only whatever access is available is more accessible to men than it is to women and girls.
Yeah, well, it's a sad reality, but it is a reality. Is the oppression that somehow based on some old mentalities. It's We have this situation in Haiti, but in Africa is very systematic. Where they would physically mutilate. Like they would, circumcision and all that stuff they do to young girls. And in Haiti, for instance, even if we're not by law cohesive in this way, but the reality still tells you that's the case. I think in terms of policy, the mother constitution should be clear about this. It should be clear that any form of violence is punishable by law and should be criminalized. It should be criminal for anyone to inflict pain. And that's why in our schools we forbid corporal punishment. It is forbidden. Like just last year, there was a teacher who beat up a kid so bad that, make a kid blind in one eye. When we made, training after training, we have a policy about that, and still the mindset is such that they will practice it. And so we have to be intentional again in the policies that are the constitutions, and also the private network individuals. They have to understand that that there are policies that favor betterment, and there are some that disfavor it. And in that sense, they need to be aware what are those, and put them in the protocols and the policies, and make sure that they are reinforced, make sure they are practiced, and then the perpetrators need to be punished accordingly. And for that reason, I feel like that goes back again to the whole society of, okay, we need a set of laws, protocols that protect people, that help conduce a better supporting environment for growth. But at the same time, there needs to be a court system where there are, like that instance with the teacher, like should go to the court, and that person should pay to the full extent of the law for what they've done. And what happened to the society where the court system is ill functioning, and with little resources to make it happen, judges don't have any, training or any good salary, so they end up going and do other jobs, and they show up part-time to the court. So dysfunctional society has dysfunctional individuals. And then it's been planned that way because when you run a society dysfunctional for that long, people become dysfunctional, not because this is what they want, but because this is what they have learned over the years, year after year after year, becomes again a culture, becomes a problem of character. Then you see, so citizens almost have a character flaw, and you say, well, it's because they're Black, it's because they're from Haiti. It's far from it. Has nothing to do with ethnicity, has nothing to do with, and as a matter of fact, you see people in Rwanda doing better because they have a functioning government. There's laws, the same thing as Singapore, where there's laws, there's regulations, and the government is working for the people, and they build a symbiotic relationships where they better their lives together. So that's just, again, you cannot take away a part of a society and neglect the rest, because all of it is interconnected. And because of that, change also could come from that. So education could, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, one of the things that was really kind of, that really, I think, influenced me when I was in Haiti, and I wanted to talk about it a little bit because it was, I think, key to the title of your first book, was this relationship between international aid, development aid, and how that impacts a community. Specifically, can you give examples, and I often cite the examples from your book, how international NGOs kind of undermine a market-based economy, and maybe discuss some of those alternatives?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same perversion, I would say, of how good intention can, or sometimes bad intention, can create and sustain a culture of dependency, of corrupted mind. You can almost, like, you create you manufacture people's mind, so they become crooked. Like, there's no way that they would have a creative mind thinking forward in that reality they live in. They need somehow to break that reality. That's what foreign aid has done for so long, because they have people were never given the opportunity to solve themselves their own problems.
So I guess one of the things that you often tell stories about this, and I was hoping you could kind of give an example. You have a couple in your book. Just give kind of a concrete example of how this aid has affected businesses, for example, in Haiti and around the world.
Yes, because of the aid basically replaced the opportunity. So I'm supposed to be investing based on opportunity and transact. That's what we're talking about earlier, trade. That trade needs to create a value for the customer. Like I buy a bottle of water, I'm not thirsty, and me and the entrepreneur, I make a profit. That's how the world work. That's how capitalism works. That's how the market economy works, by trading. So because the NGOs move in and offer all of these goods for free, then it takes away that opportunity to trade, therefore creates zero value. And because it's not creating any value, that societies become less and less productive. And its citizens even forget how to create value. Or heck, they even forget they need to be creating value. And when you do this over 50 years, then you have a total dependent country where people can almost think for themselves, right? The reality they know is what they're going to live by. And all of a sudden, there's no aid anymore. What happened? So they're not equipped for this. But the other end of the spectrum is to think, well, because aid creates dependency, then we're not going to help anyone right now. You on your own, go and just, it's either you make it or die. I think the two extremes are very polarized, and they are dangerous. And I feel like somehow is not reflecting a creative solution. Because what we propose in the book is a partnership model where, to get the country, like you have a battery that's dead, right? You boost it with another battery. So the NGOs come, and there's four solutions we propose. The NGOs should be regulated. They should never be there forever. They should have a specific time they work on a problem. As they work on the problem, they need to partner with local businesses. They should never be allowed to bring all the goods from overseas, benefiting businesses overseas, and dump the goods in the country. They should buy as much as they can within the local economy to restore that opportunity factor. Then local businessmen, the young people they are trying to help to begin with, can see those opportunities and invest time, money, and energy to pursue those opportunities, and then provide a productive return for society to be more and more productive over the years. So that's basically I would say, just basic common sense the book is telling people to do. But sadly, something that was ignored for the longest time of convenience, that, okay, it's a hard country to get things, to buy things of quality. Let's just import it all, and it doesn't matter what happened to the market, to the economy. So I think this is a disrupted factors that we brought in, we documented. So now if somebody continue to do this, it's not out of knowledge. It's not because you don't know. Now we take the, voluntary out of the question. Now you know, right? If you continue to do it, it's because you intend to harm. Now you have the knowledge. And that's why we wrote this book, is to take out, okay, this element of, well, I didn't know any better. And now everybody could stop creatively thinking and making analysis creatively. How can I partner with local businesses to support, enhance, and help the local economy instead of wiping it out?
Thank you. So, Daniel, we have about 10 minutes or so left, and I wanted to take this opportunity to get to have you answer some questions from those people who have been listening to us as we've gone along. So if you could post the questions in the chat for me, because I can't see them. And all right, so Hanan, are you able to ask the first question?
Oh. What does education and sustainability look like currently? How is it different for men versus women?
I think education sustain betterment. Sustainability is such a concept. you're sustainable if you are able to take care of yourself, basically. In a nutshell, you can say that you make economically, you're sustainable if you're making enough income to keep you alive and grow, right? But the reason why I like to use betterment and flourishing is because you don't just want to be self-sustaining. You want to flourish. You want to grow to your full potential. And unfortunately, the problem is um, men and women are not given the same opportunity. That this is the question that we've been talking about earlier, where society for some reason have not been given equal opportunity to men and women. So in that sense, because inherently somehow the society has built this unequal access to opportunities, to education, to health, to jobs, to that creates a gap, a vacuum between men and women. You can see even in developed world where the pay gap is something that a lot of Scandinavian countries have worked on, and almost a lot of countries are really, really ahead of this to bridge the pay gap between men and women. And there are societies where this is not even a question. There's not even a data about it. It doesn't mean it's not happening. It's because the societies they have not made the effort to document it and make an effort to solve it. So I think that education is a huge equalizer, and giving equal access to men and women make sure that learning opportunity and treatment, as you can see this, given a equal opportunity, but given a bad treatment for young girls in the classrooms, just there are countries where girls don't go to school, or they would rather go to the markets. Their parents made them go to the market, and after school. And I was reading a book Melinda Gate wrote, has a lot of interesting facts about it, where young girls, they have to not just go to school, but they after school they have to do household chores. We have that in Haiti, where after school the girls have to cook and do household chores and cleaning while the boys are studying or playing, enjoying quality of life. So it's just this kind of mindset that's taken the world a long time to get here. I mean, it's not a long time ago women were allowed to vote in developed countries. So I think that the data is clear today. There's more data available now. People know better today. And because of that, there should be intentional policies. Groups like yourself, is worldwide, just talking about creative policies and move that to countries like Yemen, to countries like South Sudan, to countries like Haiti, where, even if there's policies, but people at the end don't enjoy that policy because of poverty, because of deficiencies in those societies.
So, Daniel, I'd kind of like to go back to kind of make a full circle and go back to one of the places where we started. And for all of those people who have taken the time to come and listen to you talking to better understand the situation in Haiti, as they go back to their locations, to their networks, what would you like them to say to other people about Haiti? What message would you like them to help you spread about Haiti?
Haiti is a place of opportunity. I'm never going to leave Haiti. I love Haiti. This is my home. I will not leave Haiti for the United States. No offense to you, Linda. I love the US. It's almost like a second home. I feel I know there's all kinds of problems there, but I feel at home in the US, but not as much as I do in Haiti. It's where I live. I could die tomorrow and I will feel good about it. And it's a place of opportunity, of partnership. There are good men and women there. Make the effort. I work with a group of investors. We've been able to do investment. It's slow growth, but it's steady growth. But also it's about relationship. Who do you build relationship with, and how do you measure your growth? It's about long term. You will not win, or you will not make significant progress. You may make positive change in the short term, but significant change will happen in the long term. That means that you have to be patient, and you have to also change your metrics in terms of how do you measure your success. And so those are some of the things that I would say to those people, to be intentional, change your metrics, think long term, think relationship, think betterment, and you will never change Haiti in a year or 10 years. There are a lot of operational changes. Personally, my job is to salvage broken NGOs, and I've done this in 4 or 5 NGOs of large scales, completely change around the culture, the budget, the database, the decision-making process, the staff, the productivity, and also we invest in a number of businesses. Change can happen. I've seen it myself. That's what I do for a living. And because of this, it took me like a good 10, 15 years to get to this. And with this mindset, we are going to change Haiti. Haiti will be changed. There's no question about it. It will be changed. But it's just a matter of, okay, how do we put like-minded people together to understand, okay, this is long-term. This is not the conventional metrics. This is not about just operational. It's about relationship. Thinking about, okay, how do we deploy system change? And I think this is when you see the change that we wish to see.
Okay. So I want to thank you very much for your time, Daniel. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. I hope to see you one day soon. Maybe I'll be in Haiti or you'll be in the US. And also thank you for everything you do, especially to support children in Haiti. So thank you very, very much for joining us.
Thank you, Linda and team. It's always a pleasure.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.